KT.
Over to you.
Over to me. Great. Well, good evening, everyone, and hi, Tim. What I thought I'd do tonight is simply run through a few things that I thought have been really sort of instrumental in helping me in a really practical sense. So rather than being over theoretical, I thought I could try and link that theory to some really practical outcomes. So some tools that you can use as a manager to really help you build a successful team. And I'm happy to take questions as we go. So if you want to jump in at any point with a question, then by all means you can type it in the screen and I'll answer the question directly. So as Katie said, I've sort of spent my entire working life in large corporates and education or sort of education type roles. So I have learning and development background. I work in human resources as well. My teaching experience is largely in human resources and learning and development. So I've delivered degrees and diplomas and master's level programs in regard to human resources and learning and development. So they're definitely the areas of interest for me. A little bit about my job now, so it'll help with a little bit of sort of understanding of how all of this fits in. So I'm the learning design manager at Swinburne Online. So my team build the units, and until recently that excluded the vet units, of which you guys tonight are studying. But as of more recently, my team look after the design of the vet units as well. So the diploma units and the higher ed units and the master's units, all that are delivered with Swinburne and other partners. So my team do all the online learning piece for MyQuest and also for Canvas and Blackboard that we use in the higher ed platforms as well. So there's a team of about 16 in learning design. We have learning design team, a variety of backgrounds, largely education, so they've mostly worked as teachers or in higher ed. A lot of them have doctorate degrees or master's degrees. And as I said, what they're doing is working with academics and subject matter experts to put learning content online so that you guys as students at Swinburne Online have access to that material. So I oversee that team. I think I said there's about 16 or 17 permanent staff and then a whole lot of temps that we use. They're divided into 3 pods. So I have about 7 or 8 direct reports and then sort of 16 longer term reports. It's a largish team, not the largest team I've ran. So I've been involved in teams that have been sort of 24 and 25 large and global. So I've had to manage teams in that have had people in New York and Dublin and London and Amsterdam, all working on projects at various points. And I've had to manage a remote workforce as well, so it's always quite challenging. Anyway, so that's sort of enough about me. Let me get on with it. For those of you who are online, Tim, if you got a moment, maybe you could tell me a little bit about what you're studying and what you do at work, sort of give me a sort of sense of where to pitch things. And so if you get a minute, type something through. But apart from that, I'll move on. I actually think this is a really useful slide. And a really good sort of framing piece, if you like, for really where I want to go for the next 15 or 20 minutes. I know we talk about the terms leadership and management. We often use these terms as meaning the same. But I think for the sake of this presentation, it's really worth separating these two pieces. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means. So if we think about managers as being the key things that managers do sitting on the left-hand side of this table. So they're very much administrative focused. They look at maintaining the status quo. Really, the whole focus for managers is about getting things done. It's crazy work management. I mean, there's always enormous amounts of work to do and really never enough time. Managers in Australia are just about always experts in their field. So quite often you see that the person that's really good at learning design gets to be the learning design manager. and the person that's really good at human resources gets to be the human resource manager, and the person that's really good at IT gets to be the IT manager. And yet these things are fundamentally different. So what we know and what research tells us is that the people that are often really great at being IT managers are often not necessarily great at the people side of management. So there might be great IT people, but not great management people. Thanks, Tim. So I can see that you work as a team leader. So some of this stuff will be really relevant for you. Tim is working in an insurance company, studying leadership and management diplomas. So fantastic. So thanks for sharing. So the managers very much control, very much managing the budgets, really managing the vision. The focus for managers is so much about the day-to-day stuff, very short-term focused. The focus for managers is really about bringing the people on board and getting the work done through their people. Whereas if you look at the right-hand side of this presentation, you can see that the leaders are much more innovative. The leader's job is around challenging the status quo, whereas the manager is the guy that probably tends to sort of get down and have to do the work. So very much about maintenance. The leader's the guy that's going to come in and say, well, why do we always do it like that? And the manager's going to be scrambling around trying to get the basics done. Leaders are looking for new opportunities. They're much more overseeing and less operational, so less bogged down with the detail. They have a much broader perspective. So a good leader is looking at not what's happening this week or next week, but what's happening in 6 months. What does 12 months look like? And depending on the organisation you work in, 6 months or 12 months can be quite significant. I think about where I work, and 6 months is a crazy amount of time because things change so quickly. So in very innovative organisations, 6 months can be a long time. But the leaders are looking at where's the next business opportunity, where's the market going, what is that going to look like? And then, of course, creating the vision to get there. So their focus is on long range and they're very entrepreneurial. So a real key difference there. So quite often you might be a team leader or a manager, and you may well be doing both of these things, but the general focus for most of us, and particularly around today's topic, is around the management side of things, the getting things done through management. And I always say that if you can get those things done, if you can do the administration, the management, the process improvement, if you can manage a whole lot of these things on the left-hand side through great people management, then you really get to start to step up and focus on the leadership side of things. So it's very difficult to challenge the status quo, to be innovative, to look at the long-term perspective or the long-range perspective, to be entrepreneurial. That's a very difficult thing if you're bogged down operationally. So what I'm suggesting, and as I said, I think this slide sort of sums it up quite nicely, is that the focus initially is on the management side and getting that right, and really building the team to the point where a lot of the stuff on the left-hand side gets done through others, so that you can start to pick up the leadership stuff on the right-hand side. So just in summary, before I move to the next slide, we use these terms often interchangeably. So we say leaders and managers, we quite often mean one or the other. We rarely mean the same, but we do use these terms interchangeably, and I think that's problematic. So I think knowing the distinction, and Chris Cole, whose work this is, really does summarise this quite nicely. And it does allow us to go, okay, I'm going to really focus on getting that management stuff right so that I can then turn my attention to the leadership stuff. So I'll move on from here, but just to make that distinction really clear, I think is really important, and really does allow a focus for new managers or people at team leader level or management level to really know where their areas of influence are and how they can move on to the leadership side of things. So once again, I think the key here is getting the management things done through others, and a lot of the presentation tonight will be really around how do you bring your team along, how do you get this sort of thing done through other people, and that's what really good team leadership is about. So really, I think this sums it up quite nicely. A very old reference, but a really important one, continually referenced in management circles. So management really is about the process of achieving organisational goals through the major functions. And what we're talking about here is the things that managers do. So once again, going back to the previous slide, thinking about the things that you do as a manager, on the left-hand side of the previous slide, is those things can be really addressed through planning, organising, leading and controlling. And they are the four key things that management focuses on. And they're the things we're doing all the time. And if you think about your own jobs and how you're managing a team now, you think about pretty much all you do all day long, you could probably organise into one of those categories. I'm organising and coordinating, getting work done through others. I'm planning for the next piece. I'm leading, so I'm stepping up and taking some of those responsibilities that lie on the left-hand side of the previous slide. Or I'm controlling, I'm managing quality and controlling quality and making sure things get done to deadlines. So as I see it, those sort of four functions lend itself to what we do all day long, and certainly lends itself to the work that I do in learning design. Excuse me. It's really challenging management. I think most of us think, we were really good at what we did, and we might have worked in a call centre or some sort of admin type role, and then next thing we know, we're the manager, and that's great. We get to tell people what to do. But of course, it's much more complex than that, and I think very quickly most new managers find that it is very challenging, unfortunately, from a management perspective, and also fortunately, all people aren't the same. So that makes really simple tasks or the planning, the coordinating, the organising, all of those things very difficult. People don't hear those things the same. They don't understand them the same. People don't want to do what you ask them to do. Is asking the best way to manage the people? Is it about involving them? When do we involve? When do we ask? When do we tell? What are the distinctions around those things? So very challenging indeed, management in general. And what we know in Australia is that most people get to be managers simply because they've been in a role for a long period of time. And we also know in Australia that a lot of pay increases are associated with management. So you can be in IT, you can work in IT and be very good technically, and then the way to get more money, the way to earn an extra $10,000 or $15,000 each year is to manage the IT team. And that means that you don't get to do the IT work anymore, but what you get to do is the management of others. And once again, these two things are fundamentally different. And quite often what we find is the IT manager, as an example, that then gets to be the manager, or the IT worker that gets to be the manager of people, finds that particularly challenging. In Australia, most managers have little or no formal qualifications or training in managing others. Sometimes there's on-the-job training, sometimes there's short courses, but very little of our managers in Australia are formally qualified. And the Australian government has been working very hard at that. And in fact, the leadership and management diploma and those sort of previous versions of frontline leadership and frontline management diplomas were all geared around getting managers more qualified. I've touched on this, so I won't dwell, but managers are often the experts in their department. Quite often their promotion is based on their ability to perform the technical aspect rather than their leadership or management capabilities. And that's the dilemma that we have in Australia. We quite often end up working for managers that in actual fact are not particularly good managers because they haven't had that formal coaching or formal training, or haven't done a diploma or the like in management. So as I said, I think some of that's shifting a little bit, but quite often the way to greater income is through managing others. This is interesting too. So this sort of summarises or builds on the previous point. 2009, so a little while ago, but 439 medium and large size organisations. We were looking here in this study about comparing Australia's performance with 15 other countries. The research identified that clearly good managers are the key to business success, and in that survey of the 15 other countries, Australia was ranked 6 in management performance. So not outstanding, but not massively problematic either. The research looked at operational management, performance management and people management, and across those categories Australian managers rated marginally above the international benchmark. Now that's a piece that, as I said, Australian government has been very focused on developing, or previous Australian governments, not so much on the agenda anymore, but really trying to have highly qualified or qualified managers that are best equipped to lead teams and manage people, particularly if we link back into the previous slide where business success is very much dependent on managers and how managers operate. All right, so once again, the 4 management functions are planning, organising, leading and controlling. So just to recap on that, I think that as learning as you start to think about what you're doing, you'll find that most of the tasks that you do fall into one of these categories. And so for me, as a manager of a fairly large team, I can't see too many things that I do that fall outside of that. There is always elements of these things associated with everything that I do. I wanted to talk to you about this. For mine, this is one of the key management tools. So this was introduced to me a very long time ago, and I've sort of adapted it and used this since. So if we talk about what good managers do is bring their team along or get the work done through others, and if they're planning and coordinating and controlling and leading, then the way to do that is through others, and as I said, bringing people along. So this lovely little model allows us to think about our team from a performance management perspective more broadly. So if I look across my team of 20 or 16 or whatever I've got, plus the temp staff, and I think about my team in that way, then one of my key jobs as a manager of that team is to be very clear about what acceptable level of performance is. So in this instance, I'm talking about being very clear around setting this piece very clearly. So I want my team to know this at any point in time. So when my team come in the morning, they know the things that they need to be working on, and they're very clear about that. And this is really about having very clear performance goals and reinforced messages around that. So for us in the learning design team, we are often reiterating those performance goals through conversation. So I talk about the 3 key learning design goals for the next 12 months, and we build our individual performance goals around those 3 key performance goals or key focus points for the learning design team. So getting this acceptable level of performance clear for mine is really the first thing that we need to do. So the argument then is, if someone in your team is underperforming, then the first question you need to ask yourself as a manager is, are they underperforming because we haven't established that acceptable level of performance? Is that not clear? So if that were the case, if we ask that question of ourselves, we might say that we haven't done that, or we haven't made that clear as a manager. So the first job that we have to do as a manager is be very clear about what our acceptable level of performance is. And for us at Swinburne Online, that very strongly relates to the values of the organisation. So 50% of our performance goals and how our bonuses are equated relate to 50% of our values, our values-based, behavioural type things, being a good team player, being innovative, those sorts of things, and 50% are about the doing. So I always talk about the performance goals as being the what and the how. So at Swinburne Online, the what goals relate to what do I need to produce, how many online units do I need to develop, and at what level of quality. So that's very much about what I'm doing, and the how piece for us at Swinburne Online is very much about what are the behaviours that I will demonstrate around those behaviours. So it's not okay to produce all of your online learning units on time with an outstanding quality if you upset about 5 or 6 people along the way. So for us at Swinburne Online, the how and the what are 50% each, and so it's about equal proportion of those, and that's for us very much about setting that acceptable level of performance. So being very clear about that is the first key goal as a manager, and we do this formally through performance goals, and we do it informally through day-to-day feedback and providing feedback to our staff members, both when they're doing a great job and when they're not doing so well. We point those things out, and we're very clear about that. At any point in time, as a manager, we may well have people at the high end of this continuum. So we would call these people talent. These are people that are exceeding their goals. So at Swinburne Online, we call these people, these are our above targets or our outstanding employees. In general management speak, that's our talent. These are the people that would, for us as a team leader or a manager, the people at this end, if they left because they were unhappy or they were offered jobs elsewhere and they decided to leave, they're the ones that would hurt us or cause the business pain of some sort. Or us as a manager, as a management team, we would go, I can't do my job as a manager anywhere near as well because I've lost someone in my talent pool. So they're the ones that we work really hard at hanging on to for a variety of ways. We may also have some people at the low end of the scale, and if these people leave, we are less fussed by that. So these are the people that if you work in a sales environment, the ones at this end of the continuum are the ones bringing in most sales and therefore very good for your business, whereas the ones at this end are struggling to meet their sales targets. So if they leave, that's less of an issue. As a bare minimum, of course, we expect that our team would sit at this level, at acceptable level of performance. So our task as a manager of people is first of all around the retention of these people so that we keep our high achievers. And that means that there is a slightly different management focus, if you like, around these people. Certainly for mine, these people should be rewarded more substantially than the ones that are sitting at the other end of this continuum, because these are the ones that are most valuable to the business. If we look down this end of the continuum, the challenge for management is to bring them initially up to this point, to acceptable level of performance, and to be very clear about what that is, and to help coach and move that performance towards that level. And if that's unable to happen, then the alternative for these people is that we look at a way that they can exit the business, and that may be through a formal performance management process where warnings are given or the like. So these people are less valuable to our business at this point, but of course the first point of focus is around getting them up to this level, and if that doesn't work, number two option is to move them out of the business and to replace those with people that will work at this level or would come up to this level. So I think this is a really important piece for any management. Now, what we know as managers is intuitively, at any single point in time, a good manager would be able to plot their staff members. So, for the people who are watching this presentation, and Tim, I know you're online here, if you manage a team of 5 or 6 people, you'd be able to go, okay, I reckon I've got 3 people at the high end, I've got a couple at the low end, and I've got a few in the middle. And you should know that intuitively at any point in time. And what formal performance management systems do, like KPIs, is they put some sort of science around this piece. So once again, intuitively as managers, you would know where your people sit, but the formal performance management system are designed to confirm that for you, and then reward systems ideally link very closely. So at Swinburne Online, the people at this high end of the continuum, so I'm talking about this end now, they are rewarded more handsomely than the ones at the other end of the continuum, so that the ones that are in here. And for mine, that's most appropriate. So these are the ones that are valuable. They should get more money come bonus time than the people that work here. So a really, really nice little management tool that sort of helps you just sort of manage your team more broadly. So if you've got any questions about that, you can type them up. I'm happy to come back and make reference to this this slide, but I hope that's really useful. Okay, so I'll just move on a little to this point. This is an example of some formal performance goals. These are directly taken from the Learning Design Management team. So in management, we work really hard at setting these goals, and you can see here, this is a below target measure. So if I go back to the previous slide, this would be someone that's achieved at this level. So that's unacceptable performance. We call this on target, we call this above target, and we call this an outstanding measure. And you can see here that these measures are very, very clear. So at any point in time, I want someone that works in my team to know what that looks like. So if they were taking out their performance goals today and they looked at those performance goals and said, uh-oh, I'm currently performing down here, I know what I need to do so that I can perform up at this end. So being very transparent and very clear and very objective. You can see the numbers associated with these things. So these are the what goals, the output goals, not the how goals, the values. These are the what goals. So this is for a people of manager. We expect that we run a company survey, and we expect that that company survey falls into the 10%, at an on-target level at between 10 and 14% across those dimensions. So being very clear about that. And you can see here what I'm doing is linking these two pieces together. I'm linking an on-target or acceptable performance with some very clear goals in this piece here. Excuse the mess that I'm creating here. And here's another goal that's written in very much the same English. So once again, these are the what goals. These are the 50% of output goals, not the values goals. But I hope that gives you a fairly clear example of what that might look like. I'm just going to cover these next slides really quickly. I won't stay on this presentation too long. I think I've been about 20 minutes already, and I don't want to be too long. The key focus here is just the 4 functions and the sort of activities that you would take as a manager. So planning and decision making is really about setting organisational goals. Organising is about working out the best way to get the work done, really. The activities and resources associated with that, monitoring and controlling, of course, and facilitating goal attainment, and then the motivation piece here. How do you motivate your employees so that they want to come to work and they want to achieve? And I think just going back to these sort of things, being really clear about the goals, and being really clear about some of these things really does help individuals take control of their own achievements. And so my attitude's always been that if you are a high achiever within the organisation, I'm going to show you what a high achievement looks like, and you're going to be rewarded accordingly. And I know as managers we don't always have control over how that reward is distributed, but it's sort of nice if we can do that, or at least provide opportunities for that. Just quickly here, this continuing. So this is where the terms are often used interchangeably. This is called a continuum of leadership behaviour, but it's very much management focused. We see down at this end, employees get a lot of freedom, whereas down this end, the manager is telling people what to do, quite consistently. So down here, the focus is on telling, whereas down at this end, the focus is on sort of asking, or if you like, assigning. So these functions are very different. So as a manager here, we would be telling, and there's most appropriate times that we would tell and be very clear about things, and there's other times down here where we would be asking employees' input or assigning that responsibility over to the team. So this is a very democratic approach down on the right and a very consultative approach on the other side. This sort of breaks that down a little bit further. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. I think all of these management approaches are appropriate, and just for the fact that I have a very short time for this presentation, I'm not going to address this in any more detail, but it is a really good reference tool. It talks about where you can focus your attention, and you can see from a team management perspective, the real focus here is on getting to a point where we're operating at a 9-9 level. Work is accomplished through committed people with lots of interdependence, through a common understanding of how that should occur. And the relationship between the manager and the staff is really built on trust and respect. So I think as a manager, in most instances, we want to operate here. But of course, that's not always the case, and it depends on where your team is at any point in time. All right, that's largely what I wanted to cover today. I'm happy to address any questions if there are any. I know I've covered those things really quickly. As I said, some really useful key tools, particularly the performance management continuum. I will take all that mess off there, but I am most happy to answer any questions at this point. Otherwise, Katie, I will hand
Over
back
to me. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that.